Rajidele, Tajakala Yopadan de Pepe, Rinkidina Batama, Rajidele, Trisan Jagus, from the Nana Sam, Samba Semi, Omarisha, then Saman Bavai, comes to Simti, Tamil Bavai, Rajidele.
Dashidele to all the Sangha on the live stream and all of you assembled here. I'm offering you from the Buddha's begging bowl this milk tea of immeasurable love, and I'm offering that to all the sentient beings in the three realms of samsara. Dashidelek.
Arbadan Thomjen Jimbe Bardo Jubar Seba Thomje Jator Sebe Manam Kadan Yambe Simjen Thomje Deva Dante Donga Danja Nyudulana Mebayanda Yoga Sancho Rinpoche Topasha.
All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment.
Maje pardo lunga yesum gevalako Tuterena zonda nyama santa samjeba lunga yesum gevalako.
For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue.
Kedorim jene bada, ebyen dola pendonda, sancho semne kejeje, ebyen tunne la bala, rembaje, sabaje.
I take refuge in the Buddhas until attaining the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until attaining the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path.
Sanje chudan sujen chonan la, sanjo bardu dane jabdunche, kage jin sojin be sonamje, dola penso sanjen de basho.
Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
je ten ram ja jun sam ja ram jan jam so shen ge jor pe so ma lu lo ye lang de ba la na ten yen do kon to je zong de so da le long ju do ba jin jie da hong kam jin jie ta yong de ma jie da de zong wen ngu bu zhe xie kong ber jie dan jin jie ba shen jie lo ngơ tăng ngơ men tha le yong zhe xian jian ga ne wong zhuo wong ta xie jie men jian len den de lo men zhan zhu er ve san er sin jie lo.
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping, completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and attributes of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme Mandala is the natural state. When I offer it, bless me to attain the state of Buddhahood.
Om Guru Deva Draganara Naman Pati Sasova page 11 Sem Nam Je Sambata Lo Ye Seda Jetava On Tu Monte Baye Chu Jen Kolo
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma, of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
다 사지라 다 고사를 사 고사는 강바 고사를 상 대로들이 양 대동진이 요사를 삼상들이 다 메다리 그 비막가리들라고 말 대머리 대첫 누가 내지도 좀 봐. 이 좀데 정공공주는 뭐지 그더니 아들이 가지고 라미나 jornal 송호사를 대처되는 말아리 별 뭔데 면라데 면라내는 무제데 리제진 직진 그참 장매만 샘진 장매봐요 대탐지 가래 샘진 자손 샘지 자손 나디 그 자손지 동다데 나디 뭐고 샘지사지 대리로 투기성도 소리는 코초가 나디디 파시니 디처럼 이비로도 철랩 드리디가 나디디 셔로리 대비는 나디디 뭐고를 별로 대신 다 나디디 또다 이상 이 심도비 제거리 이 소소가 내데 소소라도 대통 제용 담면라데 배용다 인사리다 벌고서 말이 양대양도 상관없다나 들면라도 내면라데 하다 초와해서 이 대자과 이
my friends, so those practices that we always do are taking refuge, cultivating bodhicitta, and offering a mandala. And each of them is extremely meaningful. And if we just think about the meaning of one of these practices, then a very strong feeling can arise in our mind. And when that feeling arises, then the ice block of the mind is somewhat melting. So yesterday we spoke about the mind generation when we talked about the prayer for excellent conduct. But now regarding the mandala offering, people often have questions about the mandala offering. And so when we offer a mandala elaborately, it becomes really vast. So we offer this billionfold universe, each with the 4 continents and Mount Meru and so on. And then each of these has a certain quality it represents. So if we were to only talk about all these qualities contained in the mandala, it would take us 2 to 3 full days of talking about that. But so when we bring these qualities to mind, then when we offer a mandala, we bring these qualities to mind, and then we think I'm offering it up to the Pure Lands. So this is how one of the highest mental capacities will think of it. But otherwise, often some doubts may arise in our minds regarding the mandala offering. And so that is, people often wonder, now we make these vast offerings to the Buddha. And now we're giving some money, and when we wonder, maybe the Buddhas need that land, that they need a building and so on, and they want to have that. So what's really the benefit of making a mandala offering? Therefore, we should not think of it in this elaborate sense. In that case, we should condense it into its essence. And so that is also why I added this particular mandala offering that comes from Milarepa's Guru Yoga practice into our opening prayers. And that comes from the Kagyu tradition by Chamgyun Kongtrul. And so, even though elaborately there is this billionfold universe, each with 4 continents and Mount Meru and so on, corresponding to the limitless sentient beings that exist in that universe. And so, however, what we need to understand is that what actually happened that there are sentient beings at all these limitless sentient beings. There are sentient beings because of self-grasping. So what we really need to offer up is self-grasping, therefore. And so this is what the Buddhas themselves had done. They gave rise to an altruistic mind, and in this way, they eliminated their own self-grasping. So we have to tame our own self-grasping. And so therefore, the most important thing to offer up, to give away, is our self-grasping. And so I myself actually also had some doubts about that in the past. Like, why is it that we make these vast offerings? And I thought that, of course, there must be some benefit in the mandala offering, but I still wondered about it. And then thinking about it again and again, that's the conclusion I came to. And anyways, because when reading this particular mandala offering by Milarepa, Milarepa's Guru Yoga, a strong feeling arose in me, and that is why I added that to our prayer book. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. And so when we think about this world, for example, starting from World War I, World War II, up until the present day, all the suffering that the world has gone through, who created that suffering? It really was created by self-grasping, because from self-grasping arise hatred, attachment, and ignorance. And so as a result of that, then some individuals developed a corrupt aspiration in their mind. And then once the conditions for them were complete, they caused a lot of harm. Then we often point our fingers and we say, oh, they did that. But we think that. But actually, who really did it is self-grasping. When one cultivates an altruistic mind and at least has a view of equalizing self with others, one wouldn't engage in such negative actions. For example, nowadays the world has gone through so much difficulties, and then on top of that, some even come and cause wars and fight with each other. And we're all people, so the person doing that is a person doing it to other people. In that regard, we're the same, but then there is other people who, for example, try to come up with methods to help others, like try to develop medicines and so on to help others. And so why is it that some people engage in negative activities? It is because of self-grasping and the negative karmic imprints, the habitual tendencies. And so these are what cause us to wander endlessly since beginningless time in samsara. And they arise in various forms, subtle and coarse. But it all is the fault of self-grasping. And so yesterday in our text, we spoke about, on page 19 in the small print, the favorable conditions. So what is the difference between favorable conditions and unfavorable conditions? Now, for example, there's some people who think that when they practice the Dharma, sometimes that then they encounter unfavorable conditions. For example, there's many people say, I started to practice the Dharma, I did retreat, and then I got so sick. So what we should understand about favorable and unfavorable conditions is that a favorable condition arises as a result of actions we have performed in previous lives. If we have understood the importance of bodhicitta and understood karma, cause and effect. It is said, if you wish to know what you did in the past, look at your present body, your present life. And so whatever we experience in this life, in the Dharma or in a worldly sense, if things go right, if we are successful, then this favorable condition comes from having cultivated love in the past. And so therefore, since it is love, since the favorable condition really is love, then who is the one who had realized that? It is the Buddha. The Buddha is the one who had realized that and who had given that to us. And so when you recognize that, you will feel that the Buddha's qualities are so incredible. And then he also gave us a method to use this love so that we actually have something, a way to practice love. And that is the taking of the Bodhisattva vow. And again, that was given to us by the Buddha. And so the Buddha also said in the beginning, I develop a mind of enlightenment. So this is how he gave it to us. So these are those favorable conditions. Or if you think that, why have I turned out well? Why are things going all right for me? I know how to practice. I clearly understand karma. And that is because of bodhicitta. And again, when you recognize that, you remember the kindness of the Buddha. And the Buddha essentially is the mind of wisdom. With your own mindfulness, with your own wisdom, you recognize the qualities of the Buddha. And the Buddha's teachings is the Dharma, and the essence of the Dharma is love and compassion. And the workings on karma, cause and effect. And if you understand karma, it is like you have received a piece of gold or something very precious. So that is the favorable condition. If you possess this favorable condition, then you're able to remember the kindness of the Buddha and of the Dharma, and then recognize that through the Buddha and the Dharma, I have now become a Sangha. I am now a good person. So yesterday we already spoke about those favorable conditions a little bit, and I shared with you according to my own, or based on my own experiences.
Garchen Rinpoche Japan song 제로 도지변은 랑을 감사 도지변은 송을 대지 말씀드린 제가 도지변은 주반에 이발 주었음 바에서 당특별히 도지변 핀주를 드리자 당생 양송은 이렇게 와서 봐양 당주사죠 누가 빠체는요 요리 그래서 당특히 받아 같이 보래서 대회를 대서 대리되는 같이 있는 안 같이 치복 가려서 오게 되나 다른 이제 잡라대 조각가 로스톰 잘 토요로드 로지마다 대처마다 촉바랑 드리다는 라로게 때문에 시작을 다들 강연체 다 득득 등의 용사되나 나가 등의 용사다 대로 용이 많고요 저리 얘네한테 실마 차벌 등의 용요리 등의 대라 다다 남과 사제부 출리 용디 가려 되는 등의 대왕 성도 봐. 등의 대왕 성도 봐도. 가는 요목이 실 저터는 등의 대왕 성도 봐. 등의 가려 대왕 성성. 다랑 동항을 송. 라게 판초고 잡먹게 레세 대코들. 다 동항을 송나. 다 동항을 당장되니 자가 봐요가 라고도 라고 요 말에 들 같이 거야. 다 잡지도 매실 맞아봐. 잠이 송강을 내서 하고 딘낭이들이 라로가 송강때 하자 독설지들이 요래 메시를 항상 막세 또는 대상 들이 저거 대상 용을 그 강리 용들이 득박강나 더버쳐 봐다디 다지 득바시 봐다 득바치 없다 지 욕강에서 또 나디리 그 말에서 사지 박차 양 들이다지 오는 용을 마마 접지 다들 르르뚜들 가다 소설을 항상 못하나 소설 대화 가는데 대화 중에 오는데第三제 용들이 야가마 대상만 놀러 좀 대지막은 되버리 대지막은 되버리 dim바데 동시와 사제 가는 게 사제 기술이 주상이제 뒤까지 동의 지금만 선다 다백이래래 다랑나 다 동의 되면요 들랑 맞지 대랑을 내대도 제요래 다다지 생각이 잘만 보기 야로는더니 다들 야탐되는 길이 될 보고로 소리고 인도를 때도 강해 되고요 다스린 거리들이 종강을 내가 지고 다들 야탐들 동행기와 대도랑 용어래서 다들 내 장기 요리시 렉송 삼드문이 줄이던 요만 은혜리 뒤까지 수까지 추기까지 야 전기적으로 가와라도 만투비지 같이 소리 대사들이 동해 대화를 줘지 오세노 요나 영강 라기 사진 강동 라서 달리자 상성 프로소성 양마가 마디모나메레스 디하고도 야 다를 동덕 제문에 다지는 동덕 세 통을 차지 좀 넓어버리 차대 동동도 내 마음을 차세들 다들 차선데 대해서 죽어는 소리 들자 가려면 어디랑 그지 나디기 제요리지 나디기 대해서 들려고 가는 명그 요리지 득바도 되지 레는 사자리지 남가가 아송들이 남가를 것도 설마고 요리지 이 사자리 시는 소리 칼라 마땅 또저는 토와 보인 토던 밥송 남가가 똑바도 야다르는 걸 마고 걸 덱지 다티도 득바시 바지 이 대로 사지가 따따 레들 득바지 뭐다 저 처럼도 덱을 하고 말이야 파 강처 다다다 남을 놓았다는 신경 막 탐제를 놓아 가렸다는 레좀 제마시 좀 제주고 되는 용요래 들들 다다 득득 용만아 들랑은 다 강의 용아 다시를 못 잡아요 대양아 뭐시 대 용어들 로지설 용어요래 로지설 용어들 심들은가 동이 독삼이 탱기로 다시 가사리에서 우리들 랑셔 탑지 좋았다 파 동양 따라서 좋았다 그런 거 취담전 좋았다 그러지 대주까지서 다 조금 반 시선을 역사를 했어 셔다 고등학생 세그리서 세바동나 그래서 동이 너무 막 탑는데 시를 가사리에서 로성데 라시야 잠에 그래서 만투비지에서는 지리성부터 다들 만투비지에서 조리지 들라니 소되면은 개별용 저도 베자스테 노디 삼년이 기대다서 지지리대 삼부대 공격들 레지 탐세를 거도 능지 고솔로 나온 요말 고주 가라 사고 요리 내가 들어 맞이를 가라 덮고 요 말에 다 레지 탐세를 능지지 뜨니가 내가 가르치려 너무 페비체들이 정말 좀 좋은게 좀 강단에 하자지 보통 늘 기본 뭐세를 보지 대송 하자지 그야 나 좀그 지그야 아래 지그야 이뭐 그 남는 집에 온 거자 이래 가지고 고솔 내가 얘기한 거야 라지 고쳐서 그 송송 드리고 로이 셔버리면들이 개장용 것만 기본만 써. 그랑 요리 좀 하나 거라 요리. 이 잠두사니 문화에서 뒤다 못tek 보면 때문에 탑송도 데리삼. 이 문화에 상관하는. 코트는 와가지고 특별히 좋으니. 호텔 메인터들이 양반도도 없어. 이 산속도 받다 빌려 강도 그 말이들이 따뜻 좀 같이 보래 되다 랍터가 책들은 데이터 만투면 진짜네요. 같이지 travar지도 못하는데 무슨 저 선도 매와 타별 같이 travar 못하는데 그 선도는 사다 동네 대화를 저지와 무슨 세만들이란 게 선도 매일로 토론 용요래 대회들이 다다 송강답제는 제게 야시저가 비 가오요 송강답제 강이 가로게 하고요. 그래서 싸움도 동시에 좀 강들하면 참강나기 잡고 나 그냥 먹고 칼라 사이로 딱고 좀 하는데 약고 차서 삼이 돼서 저쪽에 대회를 되니까 같이 잘고나 대해서 그러더니 배는 너희 자고 같이 대마다는 세대도 매일 단도요 대해서 그러더니 산쪽에서 탑대요 그래지 같이 잡아면 뭐 솔로가 지고 산쪽에 셈을 집아 대비 저기 마성
And so today we come then to the next verse, which speaks then about the adverse conditions. And so this line says, may all negativities and obscurations without exception become purified. And this verse is an aspiration to be free from adverse conditions. So first, now speaking from my own experience, my own life, how have I encountered favorable conditions and then adverse or unfavorable conditions? So first I encountered favorable conditions. I was quite, and that also actually goes back to remembering our previous lives. I was quite young. I was 7 years old when I had the hair from my crown clipped, and I was called a Turku, a reincarnation of a Lama. And during that time, I was brought into a shrine room that was filled with many different statues. And one monk would ask me, so which one of these is your Lama? And so there was this whole array of statues representing the entire golden garland lineage of the Kagyu lineage. And I immediately, spontaneously pointed at Chigden Sumgun wearing a meditation hat. And I said, this is my guru, this is my Lama. I actually remember that. And this also is one of the examples of how we remember our past lives, our previous lives. And it's not that we exactly remember what exactly I did here and there, but there is this spontaneous recognition. For example, this is my Lama, without any thought or any specifics, but there's this natural feeling of this is my Lama. And so that is actually also a sign that there are past and future lives. And so I remember that when I was very young, and that is when I still had my freedom. And then later this turned into an unfavorable condition when I lost my freedom and was put into prison. So when we experience favorable conditions, then often things arise just naturally because we have created merit in the past. Because we have practiced virtue in a previous life, good things just happen naturally. And then similarly, bad things just happen naturally if we have created negative karma in a previous life. For example, in that case, as you mentioned before, some people, for example, say, I have done a Dharma practice or a retreat and then I fell ill. And then people think that the Dharma did that. But actually, it was just a condition. The real cause is one's own misdeeds committed in previous lives. Or some people think that, or it's because I hung up this particular tanka and that now I'm experiencing some harm. So if we think in this way and then we turn away from the Dharma, this is actually the worst obstacle or the worst adverse condition. And these kind of conditions arise as a result of having broken samaya in previous lives with our guru and our Vajra siblings. For example, first we engage in Dharma practice, and then sometimes people, they practice the Dharma and then suddenly their mind changes, and then they feel that I don't need the Dharma anymore, I don't want to practice the Dharma anymore. And that's really the worst adverse condition or the worst obstacle. And it is the result of having broken samaya with the guru and Vajra companions in previous lives. It is also mentioned in the 14 root downfalls of Secret Mantra, the confession of the 14 root downfalls. Number 3 says that one must not get angry with, or I confess having gotten angry with my Vajra companions. So this is how we break the samaya with our Vajra companions. And then as a result of that, in future lives, we encounter obstacles on our Dharma path. For example, our Bodhisattva vow encounters obstacles, and we may split with the Dharma altogether. And so that is the reason why we always say the samaya is very important. And so now, Coming back to my own story, so now speaking about adverse conditions that I have encountered. So then after I had encountered the fortunate, the what is it here, the favorable condition, then very soon after I encountered unfavorable conditions, and that happened. It started at a time when I was actually doing a 3-year retreat, which I was not able to complete. I was about 2 years in when turmoil broke out in my homeland. And during that time, barbarians came to destroy the Buddha's teachings in our land. And so many people experienced a lot of suffering during that time. And I was put into prison, and so there's actually no need to speak much about it. People can imagine the great suffering that one experiences there. It's actually inexpressible. The suffering that people experienced in those camps is really inexpressible. But then again, what is a quality of the Buddha's teachings? It is that through the teachings we are able to see the suffering as happiness, actually. And that is because when we are able to transform the afflictive emotions into wisdom, then we are able to see suffering as happiness. And so how did that happen in my case? So I was thrown into prison during that time. And before that, I'm also engaged in much negative deeds. I fought in the army. And then I was arrested and put into prison. And while I was in prison, I lost all my freedom. And I had to labor hard, just like an ox in India or Nepal. It is really inexpressible. There's no need to go into the details. Anyone really knows how miserable it is in such a prison. And so that was at a time when so-called barbarians came and destroyed everything, and they would not take people or prisoners and kill them in the most horrific ways. So there was really incredible suffering. And then however, then we have to reflect, why does such suffering arise? The Buddha said, do not commit any wrong. So what is the cause of such suffering? The cause is karma, and from self-grasping. Because of self-grasping, we developed karmic imprints, habitual tendencies, and these then lead to suffering. As we said, if you want to know what you did in the past, look at your present body. So we can think about our own lives. If you're doing well, if you experience even the slightest happiness, why do you experience this happiness? It is a quality of love that you have cultivated already in previous lives. Or for example, if you are financially doing well, then that is the result of having practiced generosity. And then why do you understand this? It is due to the kindness of the Buddha and the kindness of the Dharma. And so if you experience suffering, on the other hand, that is the result of non-virtuous actions committed in the past. So this is how you need to view it. And so the way I view it now, in my example of having been in prison and having had to work hard like an ox. So in the old Tibetan tradition, we would actually use animals like horses and yaks and so on to carry all of our things, all of our baggage. So we would load those animals with very heavy baggage, and they would have to carry that. And then I find myself in prison working hard like an ox. And I really felt that this is karma. And so I'm now purifying this kind of karma. And so that is good. I am purifying my karma. I understand this. And whose kindness is this? It's the kindness of the Buddha and the kindness of the Dharma. So in this way, even though we encounter adverse conditions, we can transform all suffering into an experience of happiness. Or for example, during that time, I've also lost everything. I've lost my monastery, my home, my homeland, everything was lost. And I also felt that now I'm paying back this karmic debt, that the karmic debt of having stolen or taken from others in previous lives. So now I've lost everything. So there are different karmic creditors who come to collect their karmic debts in our lives. So if we have abused others and taking their life, or we have abused and hurt and hit others, then these karmic creditors come back and shorten our life. And then there's those karmic creditors who come for our wealth. That is, if you have stolen or deceived others or robbed others in previous lives, then there are karmic creditors who now come for our wealth. Or if we have killed others and taken their lives, then there are karmic creditors who come for our actual lives. So this is actually taught in the church teachings like that. So ultimately, I understood it was all a creation of self-grasping. It was all the fault of self-grasping. And so this term, negativity, that Tibetan, so it's Digpa in Tibetan, and Dig actually implies something that falls back, so it hits you back. So for example, if you throw a rock into the sky, right above your head, then it will fall back down onto your head. So that's the actual literal meaning of negativity in Tibetan. And also in the excellent words of advice, in Sakya's excellent words of advice, it says that if you throw some dirt into the sky, it will fall back onto your head. So that is negativity, and that's why the Buddha said, do not commit any wrong, do not commit negativity. Normal people don't understand that what they do will come back to them. And so that is why people in this world cause so much harm to one another. It is really only the fault of not understanding karma. So it is because of these negativities, these misdeeds, that we encounter so much difficulty, and people don't understand that. And so now coming back to my experience again in prison. So I spent 20 years in prison, and people were in deep misery in prison. And so there was actually this time when I was very sick, and I did experience, I was quite miserable physically. And during that time I felt it would be better if I die. So I decided it's better if I die. And so I tried to make them kill me, actually. And so I asked an official to come over to talk to me. And when he came over, I punched him in the face. And I thought, if I punch him, then surely he will kill me. Then I can die. But he didn't kill me, so nobody killed me. However, there were many people in prison who were in so much misery that they even committed suicide. And so then now thinking about this unfavorable condition, thinking about it now in hindsight, really I see it was a favorable condition. It was a support to me. For example, in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, to those who desire a wealth of virtue, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure. So then I reflected, and I changed my way of thinking about these officials, and I cultivated love for them and compassion, because I recognize that these officials too, they don't have any autonomy, they don't have any freedom, they can't help it. They also need to do their job, and they also need food to eat. That's why they're doing their job. So I felt compassion for them. And then also I felt that I will do the best I can in my work. And just think, whatever I do, whatever labor I do, it will benefit someone. And so then the time in prison actually became a very good time. I felt very happy. Or another example of one who was truly happy in prison was Khenpo Münzel Rinpoche. he actually was able to meditate in prison day and night. That was really due to the kindness and the protection of the 3 jewels. He didn't have to work at all. Throughout the 20 years he was there, he didn't even have to sweep the floor once. So he, in a way, had complete freedom in prison to practice. So he was very happy in prison. It was like a retreat, actually. So also in the prayer for excellent conduct, it says that one of the prayers is that so basically may no matter what how times change and what things may come my way, may nothing affect me negatively. So there are circumstances then where things go wrong, but still you remain unharmed. Just like we mentioned before, even though they tried to bring the teachings down, in the end, the teachings blazed even stronger, like fire. And so the bodhisattvas, and then in the end, remained unharmed, and therefore are able to say, I had a good time in prison, like Khenpo Munson. And also I can say, eventually I was actually very happy in prison. Even though it is certainly an adverse condition, I was able to find happiness. And so then for those who do not have much mental courage, for them, when they encounter adverse conditions, it is good to recite such aspiration prayers or make prayers. But for those who do have mental courage, they actually are able to transform suffering into happiness. And so these are all things I have personally experienced in my own life. And so especially during my time in prison, I encountered very miserable, negative conditions, and yet, when I was through being able to think about it in the right way, actually, the prison cell really became like a retreat hut, and became a very good time. And now I really feel that was a good time, and so we can transform things in this way. And this is really how we separate ourselves from adverse conditions. We are not really actually separating ourselves from the situation itself, but we are separating ourselves from suffering in that situation. And so this is the skillful methods of the bodhisattvas.
Simba Maube Jova, Bahanasa, Maube. Letang mo dijale namle tochi jiti lo nam se yang so letang yung ma te lete kang sa so dina le zangi kari na ta huna che ba na yi o jogi warnan de deva jamgi warnan de no ma so te yung bele sa ni le ta me yung na yang pe na le me ba de ta ko go shi ba na ji 라면 채와다 때라서봐 탑동에 대바를 저 탑대선 별이 다 조성 변 조성 다 가는데 다다다양들이 라리아 갑탐실라 개비신이 참 강이 가선 체래양들이 변디 유모 로토고요 말에 변는 것이 라마제 기포티 지성 모요레 드시바서 세드 남도 사무지 서면 남그들은 유모 마당 마크가 얘는 세드에서 내려들이 모란로 보탐별에 되는들이 자다 라리테 마타라서 상황 거리 콩 남아에 그것이 이제 계속 말이에요. 오 아니 라로시니 체랑의 추대 좀 말이들 라고스 추대 좀 말이들 콩키보 치모레다 콩 좀 말이들 참 오다치 무시지도 고거도 아니지서 고거도 추대문에 요 말이들 라고테리처럼 고사테 따텔 베야테 고사테게 랍소스 콩게 상모당나 오 같이 대대처럼 받을 송도 대송난 코 데리고도 장 똑같은 말이에 데리고 말이지 콩으로도 대송선은 미망고 록다지 오다 기본이 넣었다 당연히 거기 록다에서 제로리 남양시에가 매시 대콩 남양시에가 섭들이 다 청가를 강바를 짜로 자막강기 라고 해서 정는 노는 잡아서 짜로 집어 짜로 집어서 잡들이 뭐가 서로 야이래 들이 코 샤도 강바자 차돌 들이 차돌들이 되다 큰 처럼 차는데 너무 성화 최소 너무 직장을 강은 좀 성화 최소 그래서就是说了说个事情没咱们不用说别的空他们家这个你做什么可以哦我都讲了大姐的你到说了没到啊但基本真正个嘛样了嘛就空的空个这种这到了不算没就吧这你们吧这조르들이 돈들이 다다들이 공부스 공만은 패비어래 내가 주소를 주주고로 야채 먹고 나면 요래 데이터가 된 사촉으로 또 데이터가 요래요 잘 또 정문에 졸록까지 도서 레기 도서 다들 레디에서 요절이 레기 대화시랑 이제 컴포 뭐 로도가 되는 레기 대화 때 망도래 데이터 레충총 매는 산소를 강 데이터가 말이 대답을 조정들이 다 당하더니 저다 빼면 처음에 저와지 대단하고 토바메다 제에서 따뜻한 기본적인 뭐도 줄을 때 남들이나 라마들이 계획이 저와타면 뭐 이거 참기를 강에 대해서 때요래 대형의 대담들 그렇다고 요래 세 토끼가 누이를 세다고 그렇다고 가래 난 토미가 되지 레터 유노 받아 돌아오더니 상황 디스트릭이 뭐는 디스트릭 돌아들이 뭐이 실린 적당히 되어는 저때다지 제가 자체 뭐요 공로를 치서 저한테 이제 단디들이 저한테 조랑 제거래 마그시 미시만 뭐 텔레티 돼서 좀 오늘도 다 침보요 막 그런게 생부터니 칼을 앞마시바 대다오래 데이터 참에 고는 상태가 시그래 조는 게지 뭐는 자산의 적당마다 락탑고 요만 이제 조는 게 여기요 le carere new mo carere di le sager cani dove dove che ci muore di pena sta trangreta anche poi mi posso già io devi finire con riceva non gli sempre non c'è tu io mare cioè ne cada 또 설중이나 라는 트바송 좋아 가는 많은 동을 좋아 대도 땅을 사탄다면 주 라버들이 잡요래 매는 들다 카티 메데치단 파와도 모두 대답을 돌려들이 인단 남과리 속아서 가타고 말아 대답을 세배 대답을들이 인도는 코를 띄어를 말 종을 매봐대 인도는 코를 쪼아리나 강이 최그래 강이 대들은 최는 강이 될 뭐지 봐 들이 다다다 겨기서 뭐 잡봐 따뜻해서 뭐 와지 대답 문제지 생각 못 봤다면 무슨 적딩하는 데다 직디스 뭐그 고증하는 소리 체인데랑은 통치 좋은 정도 다 답을는 때네요 대화 탑지들이 삼제를 맞은 거 진짜요 말이지 너무 말이 다운도 라니 소님은 책대 세는 요띠리 세는 딱 다서 책대 찍고 정어야 내가 아침 뭐래 라가 대sem도 정나 다 뒤비용 되게 다 사촉선 좀 듣고 요래 되나 다 아침 뭐야 되니 봐 편의점 하고 고송 들이 자보 줘봤는데 치수 봤다더니 산속식으로 사고태가 무슨 거 대통령 송조 동대에 뒤뒤시에 너는 도와를 가는 거는 산속서 봤더니 미성스는 로요래 미성스는 도나는 대해서 플라이 같았다 왜 제발께서 샤와카지는 성거래 미성스는 생기는 도나 하여 가보요시 대답 송요래
And then, so we come to page 21, and then next is the verse for praying to tirelessly take birth in samsara for the sake of others. May I be free from karma, emotional afflictions, and the influence of demons, like the lotus unsoiled by the mire, or like the sun and moon in a clear sky. so that I may proceed unhindered. So may I be free from karma and your emotional afflictions. So again, we already mentioned that before. How do we create such negative karma that we experience suffering? So we have said that in a past life, if we engage in virtuous actions, we now experience happiness, and as a result of non-virtuous actions, we experience suffering. And so whatever karma we create with an afflicted mind will ripen. But then also, as you mentioned before, we can take it as the path as it ripens. And we mentioned that there is this method of transforming suffering into happiness. And so therefore, this is how great masters, for example, in prison, have liberated themselves from great suffering. So during that time, when the barbarians took over the country, many spiritual masters encountered great difficulties, but they took it as the path. There's one more example. Another Lama called at that time in prison Khenpo Tenzin Sangpo, and he really overcame the difficulty himself. And so now, in terms of like kind of an obstruction or like a mara, there is an outer, inner, and a secret aspect. And on the inner level, it is the afflictive emotions. And on the outer level, however, often unfavorable conditions are encountered as a result of corrupt aspirations or these barbarian kind of views. And so anyways, there was one time Khenpo Tenzin Sangpo, he told this story and from his time in prison, and he said that so when he was in prison, those officials would tell him that you have to tell others, your disciples, that the Dharma is just a lie. And so the reason why they would say that to him is because he was a great Khenpo. He had many disciples, and people had a lot of faith in him. So if he would go to people and say, oh, the Dharma is all a lie, it's not true, there's no real Dharma, and people would believe him, they would turn away from the Dharma. So those officials told him, so you go and tell your people that the Dharma is fake. And if you do that, then we will give you a lot of money and a status and so on. However, he was reflecting and he thought that there's nothing worse to do, because if I would tell people that the Dharma is a lie, then so many people would develop a wrong view towards the Dharma. And so he refused to say that to people at any cost, even at the cost of his life. So he never said anything. And so then as a punishment, they put him in iron metal shackles. So they tied up his hands, and then they put his legs in, his feet in shackles. And then they put him outside. They let him sit outside. It was quite cold. And the shackles were really tight, so he was bleeding. And because it was so cold, his toes froze, and then they fell off. The toes fell off, and he actually didn't have a single toe left. And so that is an example of someone who would not give up his commitment, even at the cost of his life. He would not tell such things to his people. And so then, in the end, when times changed, he became free, and he became a great master. So, as you mentioned before, who gave many teachings. So, as you mentioned before, the teachings cannot really be suppressed. And if they are suppressed, then they will blaze even stronger. And there's actually an image of this Lama here too. So we have an image here, and so that's one of my gurus, and he was really an example of a really fearless master. And later, when he became free, he taught the Dharma, and he had really a vast assembly. That is the power of a bodhisattva like that. And this is how, in the end, even though they encounter such a negative condition, they again become free. And of course, when things like that happen, it probably also is, of course, related to some karma that is ripening, because even the slightest karma cannot ripen if there's no prior cause. But then also, he became liberated and even more powerful than before. There were many other examples, for example, Khenpo Chingme Phuntsok or His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who have all encountered some difficulties, but again were able to free themselves from that and become even greater. So that happens on the outer level. Then on the inner level, they become liberated from this demon of afflictive emotions and karma. And on the secret level, there is Buddha nature. And on the basis of knowing that, they are able to transform afflictions into wisdom and suffering into happiness. And so actually this is a topic that we can really speak on really extensively. You should ask your questions about that during the discussion group and really discuss that with each other. I do not know how to explain that really elaborately, but I know that this prayer is really very precious. And you should definitely discuss that with each other. So, for example, you should ask each other or the teacher, now what does this mean? What about the afflictive emotions? And what about karma and so on? So just discuss things like that. I myself, I'm really only able to maybe explain 1% of all of that. And so in any case, as we can see in those examples of great masters like Khenpo Chingme Phuntsok and so forth, or Khenpo Rinzin Sangpo, in the end, no one could really affect them negatively at all. So there was this time during the cultural turmoil when we were not even allowed to recite the Mani mantra or hold a mala in our hands. And the Buddha's teachings were completely suppressed. But then again, as you mentioned yesterday, when they are suppressed, later they are blazing even stronger, like fire. So no one can really stop the teachings ultimately. And so that was just one example. And so then here, we are praying to take birth in samsara for the sake of others. And so when we take birth in samsara for the sake of others, we may encounter difficulties. But then in the end, we come out unharmed. And so that is the power of the aspiration. And it's also the power of one's own mind or one's own practice. Lord Jigten Sumgön also said in the Gongchik, so in one's own life, in what we practice in our own life, with whatever we encounter and whatever we see. And so when we experience happiness, for instance, it all arises from love. And when we experience suffering, it arises from self-grasping. All suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. So if you understand this, it is really like you have received a piece of gold. And you just need to know how to hold on to these words. And then they become very powerful. If you hold on to these words, you will also be able to transform suffering into happiness and develop great qualities. Then these words really become very powerful. For example, if you just then hear the name of this prayer for excellent conduct, already the seed of bodhicitta is planted into your mind. And so when the bodhisattvas take birth in order to benefit beings, they would even go, and they would go anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. They would even go into the 3 lower realms. But they don't see them as miserable states the way we see them. In a confession text, for example, it says that when those bodhisattvas go into the hell realms, they see it like the meadow, a meadow in a god realm. So even though they go into the lower realms, they are still very happy.
Simply tamjela devalang pinto war so the single choda sonan jata mangi sodong arab de shivarsi deva talan roa go won roa tamjela na pimba jo so da single chungde da 장미 선배 장미 다 장미 바래 데 ramjam si sengde de tamjela de simply jatamne na dongna desam 요래 de dongni de 뉴몽화도 맞지 동해 대가 말에 이래 동행이 소동화도 시작고는 딱 가해가 시작거든 나디 뉴몽화 시작고 gemagele들이 레벨 동特고 요 말이 데레들이 따다다 선진 피도 저거다 따다 담블링은 그 추시에 빨리 비용치와 매디 들 사제 조바를 선진 빈말 산지 조바라 심진 피도 바래들이 다치와 요만에다가 개비신이 삼지 추송만 삼지라 사제 좀 되게 소는 강을 줄 나와 되다가 로로다나 도로 잡았다면 대대 삼지 롱잡을 롱소를 피고 송 대삼지 추그 피는 삼 로 라마스 거동 미사 다지 탈라 잡고 자고요 대 가리 잡고 용이 대 답을 취재 용이 답을 추가 가리 빈 거니다 자 민송속에 등에 단디리 송데 단디리 유몽과 제대 저서 저대근 제면에 등에 송섬 배는 야와야다 돈로송데 야와야다 돈로송 세당 세나 목숨 송고래 대 저대로 매도 상원도 대비바세 바라 다다디 대바 매바다 추시에고래 상속세도 못 되게고 요래 들대라더니 안로와 탐제를 핀발죠 강급인 거는 주라 닝게다 모남제 왕게 삼지 제와 랑네 심지제 동도바 몸바오서 다다다 공거지 상속스마 바오서 상속 샘대 인핀 로르들 바오 착거리 내 공기 버튼 그 남탕 무슨 시에바나지 상속스마 사지 좀 되게 그거서 장매바 답이 있으면 초사서 되게 바로도 스마 돌리다 다 개비신이 담절 됐다고 그냥 똑같이 대답하서는 쉽지 싸움들이 동대답을 듣고 대답질라 대답이 강기 용어들 자상적식 용어들이 상적심을 바오해 빌은 마주를 보고서 요나요 바오 용나 보지들 강이 같이 야고 탕체야 요 말에 다 바오 차대로 그 나이 보거리 상들이 되래 다 되게 세 가지 돌아로 그러지 손남 부지 양도 토야요로 손 저쪽 토야요지 사진은 되고 토야요 말때 때들 얘기다 다 못나고 가 다들이 철제와는 랭거요 이 기와는 능력하리 다 취시 봐 코나래 때때는 단담을 개비시 수송만 탐지 다 치모래 다 때도 가리시는 소속에 대해서 써본 땅에 이 비용 대해서 써본다 소속을 상척세워 요나 대대 때서 받제래 시바 제저 제라 이또 심도 됐다고 요래시 다 되는거지 다 레마를 배산제 마시는 책대로 용도거지 드리테라 돈나 땅하고 사족선 럽 사족선 종 사족선 마냠바 메디베 저저테니 땅에 사족선이 속다들이 돈나 삼제데 주베다 보자가 인시다 가리게 답보들 라나 핀바다 이는 데베 찌뽀세들이 또 삼세들이 샤트 이르지 티자로 세속제들이 답보서 주바 속체체 동물이 어떤 기본인지 배자를 배대다 동고 요사래 내들 저들이 난걸 공나면 저저 저 제시고리 들이가게 시시 용 말이 들때
And then next is to bring benefit and happiness to all sentient beings. So it says, throughout all the lands, in all the directions, may I relieve the sufferings of the lower realms. May I be able to bring happiness to and provide benefit for all living beings. So the Buddha's aspiration was to benefit beings, and therefore he accumulated merit for 3 endless aeons. And that is because he vowed to remain for as long as sentient beings remain. And for as long as sentient beings remain, there is suffering. And there is no suffering that doesn't arise from the afflictive emotions. So if we want to eliminate the lower realms, we need to eliminate self-grasping and the afflictive emotions. If we do not eliminate the cause, we cannot avoid the result. And so for this reason, in order for beings to understand that, we need Dharma teachings. And therefore, I believe that there is really no greater benefit than teaching the Dharma to others. The greatest offering to the Buddhas and benefit to sentient beings is to teach the Dharma. It is most precious. That is why all the spiritual masters in the world, when they teach the Dharma, that is really most excellent. And because they taught the Dharma, we consider them as so, the Dharma is so precious that when, for example, when they pass away and we get a piece of their body or a piece of their robes, then we want to hold on to that. We want to keep that because it's very precious. We remember the qualities of the Dharma, and so the quality of the Dharma is that we understand that all the suffering in the three lower realms arises from self-grasping and karma. So because we grasp at a self, we give rise to afflictive emotions and we engage in action, and that will ripen in the end. And we take birth, for example, in the three lower realms, in the hells as hungry spirits or as animals. So what causes birth in these realms is hatred, stinginess, and ignorance. These are the seeds, like the seeds of a flower. So therefore, it's very important to teach them Dharma, to introduce others to the importance of bodhicitta, to compassion, the power of aspiration prayer. And so through the great courage of these great bodhisattvas, they will always take birth intentionally for the sake of sentient beings. They are courageous, they're like heroes and fearless. And so one example I just mentioned was that of Khenpo Tenzin Sangpo, who was a true bodhisattva. Just like the Buddha who accumulated merit in 3 endless aeons for the sake of others. He practiced the 6 paramitas during all this time. So the spiritual masters with such great courage are willing to undergo all sorts of difficulties for the sake of sentient beings. And that's a quality of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta makes one become courageous or fearless. Or even in a smaller sense, for example, a mother who cares for her child. No matter how difficult the child is, the mother will never get tired of caring for her child. She will always think of her child. But because she thinks it's my child, maybe half of the merit is lost, but there's still merit and the results will still be experienced. But for as long as there is this self-grasping, of course, one does not attain enlightenment. And so through the power of aspiration prayers, these great beings take birth intentionally for the sake of others. And what do they accomplish or do when they take birth? They teach the Dharma to others. And so that is why it is so precious when these spiritual teachers around the world are teaching the Dharma to others. And I think this is really the greatest benefit. And so that this courage comes from a mind of bodhicitta. So these words are really precious. It's more important to pass this on, even if one not able to pass on any money and so on. These words are really most precious. And so when we have these words and understand these, then we can hold on to bodhicitta and not allow bodhicitta to decline. So basically what these teachers are telling us is that cultivate love and protect this love with patience. And if you do so, it is to your own benefit and for the happiness of others. And so And so this is the kind of courage we want to cultivate ultimately. And so one example of such a courageous being that I mentioned was that of Khenpo Tenzin from the time in prison. And so this is all my understanding, but I don't know how to explain that well. So you still have to ask questions to the other masters. You really have to know how to ask questions, because I also don't know how to explain everything.
so ji dong go mo so ni ji ne de kwa sa sang sa pe ge song ba le ni le tab na ma ta to so ji dong go mo so ni ne de kwa sa de so tang ji le jiao de sen ji de ge ju de dong ba ji sen ji ran ge sam ba de yo de le de ni de ni ran ge de te pa chi zhong gang ge ran ni da xie le te pa chi zhong de wo xie ge yo le 소장 나서 남들을 말이래. 대 취지 부모 예세지 동성바디 산초선 도의 적들을 탑 남만하도 탑망가 매바디 왕보노 왕수는 가지 색바치범 하디 소장 나서 남들을 가래를 강을 간들들 동시에서 다다 저발 대선 거리 데이터에 제공을 제르시는 산초쪽과 용도 조시 제인데 돈나 되고 산촉세고 소대를 똑바로 되지 남들은 로서가 남과 가리는 잠을 되네 대송거 살이지 단 제시지 바만 도도 배요리 사들이네 다 먹게 뭐 통이 생적만 로마는 지도 요리 리시드 십자지 뭐시 베니 심정은 소리 뭐를 돼서 다투고요 말이 이게 지금 따다 대외의 개왕 공놈의 요리 મને તો જામ્પુ કાઠી હન રોજ સવારે કે બોતી દેર મોજે તે યાને તેની તે માકે જકું સ મક્તમ દને તે તો માને કે તાતારે તે રંગ સહબ છેટા તા થામે હા કોન રંગ ને યો તા હા કોસા તે યો જા દે જા સમ રોગો રે સજી તાકે જો다 તો સજી થાકે જો બા도 초르들이 로고 가르레들 별로 더 고다니 오 동로다 영도를 때라서 왔다면 데이터에 잡아지고 왔어요. 랑 타고 들어야 돼. 레주가 완성돼. 디단기들이 미나더니 따뜻한 만나서 요리도 동록 해봐. 탑을 개배도 막아서 탑방 먹을 때는 샘치 다그 주당 통문주 총관주서 데레들이 놀라지 탑통을 줘 가리리 샘들은 삼들이 지네 데를 담아 대봐 뭐봐 가와 좀 지네 뒤 샘들이 좋았다는데 샘이 차가운데 쉬어 탑들이 가리는 라면 탑만 가면 봐도 대동시고 살이 내려만 보고 살이 콩는 벌제 저 맞죠 나가 잠시 이제
And then we come to page 23. So that is donning the armor and praying to be tireless in methods to accomplish the benefit of others. So regarding the donning of armor, it means that we, as the Buddha has said, the Buddha tamed sentient beings according to their needs. So sentient beings must be tamed according to their needs. And one cannot tame sentient beings all in the same way. So therefore, Sakya Pandita also said, when only seeing it from one side, one is blinded. But from seeing it from two sides, awareness becomes clear. So the Buddha tamed sentient beings, benefited sentient beings according to their individual states of mind, their activities, and so forth, their specific needs. And as a result of a great variety of specific needs, the Buddha taught the 84,000 Dharma teachings, or the 3 levels of the path of Pratimoksha, Bodhisattva, and the Vajrayana. So it is said in the Vajrayana, for example, is said to be very rich in skillful means that require the least difficulty, and it is meant for those with sharp mental faculties. But so the Buddha taught tamed sentient beings in various ways according to their needs. And so one must be skillful when benefiting others. So this is what this verse is speaking about, and this is what I believe it is speaking about, and I myself am not able to explain that well. I really actually would want to explain that well, but I can't see well, so I can't really consult with long commentaries, even though I really would like to explain that in much more detail, because this is very profound, and it's also very beautiful verses. I just can't see very well, and that is why we have these great masters here, so you can ask your questions to them. For example, Khenpo Tenzin Rinpoche already had given extensive teaching on this text before, and so as a result of that, we are able to understand some. And so I myself would like to give a detailed instruction, and I'm not able to go into much more detail. But this text really has, this prayer really has so many blessings, and so therefore those who masters who are connected to me, they give an explanation on this text, on the root verses, and so this particular verse here, so fully accomplishing the activities of enlightenment may work in harmony with the needs of all beings. So in harmony with the needs of all beings. So, for example, if we want to benefit a certain being like an animal, there is a different way of benefiting them. For example, we can benefit them by providing a liberation by seeing or liberation by tasting. So depending on the sentient being's individual karmas and their karmic fortunes, we benefit them skillfully in many different ways. So we have to be skillful when it comes to benefiting sentient beings. And so in brief, the ultimate result, or the ultimate meaning really of this verse, again, is that in whichever way we are benefiting sentient beings skillfully, the result of that must be that love arises in their mind. So first, actually, a faith and devotion and a joy or an inspiration arises in their minds. And then love arises in their minds. And then that love then melts the ice block in their mind. So there are many skillful means to bring them to that state. And so this is my take on that, and I'm certain there are many more vast explanations that could be given on that verse, and so for that you have to ask these masters there and discuss it with each other. And so this is my commentary on this. Please take a break for 20 minutes.
So everyone, just stay for just a short announcement. Rinpoche would like to take a group photo with us here. So we're going to meet in